The Supreme Court just dropped an unexpected bombshell on Donald Trump because their most recent decision is not good news for both Trump and Peter Navarro, Trump's pick for top trade and manufacturing advisor. Now, Peter Navarro was also working with Trump during his first administration as a trade advisor, and has been picked once again to come back for a second time. But here's where things get interesting, because Peter Navarro was actually just in jail from March to July of this year for defying a subpoena. Take a look at this clip because it explains a bit about Peter Navarro, and keep this information in mind because this relates to the bombshell that the Supreme Court just dropped on Trump. So watch this clip and then we'll dive into the bombshell.
Let's talk about Peter Navarro now, a man who spent 4 months in federal prison, but picked now to be Trump's top trade advisor. NBC's Vaughn Hilliard is reporting on this for us. This is somebody who's very familiar in Trump world.
Right. Folks will recall that Peter Navarro, just hours after finishing that 4-month federal prison stay for defying the subpoena of the January 6th Select Committee, he went to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and delivered a speech at the Republican National Convention in defense of Donald Trump and what he said were political prosecutions of him and the former president. And Peter Navarro, he served in the first Trump White House as a trade advisor to Donald Trump, of course, during the first trade war in 2018, 2019. And now he has been tapped by Donald Trump again to serve as a trade and manufacturing advisor in this second Trump White House come next January. Now, it's notable because obviously Peter Navarro is somebody who is very much echoed and has fought for the protectionist trade policies that Donald Trump has sought to implement in his first administration and now has pledged to only escalate come next January. But this is also calling into questions the extent to where the directives on trade policy are going to come in this next trade White House, because Donald Trump has tapped Howard Lutnick to be the Commerce Secretary. And at the same time, he has directed that Lutnick will be effectively the key advisor on enacting his trade policies, which does not typically come out of the Commerce Department. Because just a week ago, Donald Trump also called for the nomination of Jamison Greer to be his U.S. trade representative. And he has also sought to bring on Kevin Hassett, who helped lead his trade policy in his first administration, to serve as the head of his National Economic Council. And so he is turning to several individuals who he clearly has faith and trust in to enact his trade policies, but across multiple capacities of the executive branch. But of course, Peter Navarro is somebody who has, for the last 8 years, been right by Donald Trump's side, even when he was in federal prison, and now intends to come back in 2025 and serve in the White House for him again.
So yeah, it's clear that this was a pick that was based solely on loyalty. Peter Navarro defied his subpoena, went to jail for it, and then went straight back out to defending and promoting Trump. This is exactly the kind of guy that Trump would want in his office, someone who would quite literally go to jail for you. And if we've learned anything from Trump's first term, there will be a lot of laws broken and a need for scapegoats. So Peter Navarro is pretty much the perfect pick for the job, if you ask me. Now, let's talk about the bombshell that the Supreme Court just dropped on Trump, because they have just announced that they are leaving a ruling in place that will force Peter Navarro to release presidential email records to the National Archives and Records Administration. This administration is basically tasked with collecting and archiving records of presidents and other things in the government. That's pretty much it. So why would Peter Navarro be fighting tooth and nail to defend these records? He clearly doesn't care what happens to himself because he was just willing to throw himself in jail for Donald Trump. So there must be some pretty damning things in there about Trump that he didn't want anyone to know about. And keep in mind that these emails were not in his government email, but they were instead on his private email, which is why he was able to fight so hard to keep them private. But luckily with this new ruling, he's going to be forced to release these records, and who knows what kind of destruction this will cause. This decision will certainly rock the boat of the incoming Trump presidency and his White House inner circle, because once these records get released, who knows what kind of information will be learned about Trump. This is definitely something that will make the people lose trust in him, and will definitely be another example of how Trump and his entire team just can't be trusted. It might be so bad, in fact, that Congress has a hard time confirming his current staff lineup. But either way, he is a threat to our national security, and the people elected him to be our president. You just can't make this stuff up.